Well, Google is once again in the crosshairs of Congress, with Utah Senator Mike Lee raising questions about whether the tech giant is violating antitrust laws and operating as a monopoly. Here's One America's John Hines.
Google has been up before your committee, a hearing you were chairing. What would you say are some of the headlines from that hearing?
We had a good, robust discussion with a representative from Google and from various industry experts, talking about arguments that have been made by some to the effect that Google might have engaged in an unlawful tying agreement in violation of Section 2 of the Sherman Act. The idea being that Google, to the extent it's acquired monopoly power, remember it's not a violation of antitrust laws to be a monopolist, but if you acquire monopoly power and then you use that monopoly power to maintain it and to engage in anti-competitive behavior, then you've got a problem. So we heard testimony on both sides of that issue.
You have expressed concerns about viewpoint discrimination on the part of a lot of these internet service providers, citing Section 230 of the SEC code, which essentially is their charter. This hearing nominally was about advertising. Are these more or less two sides of the same coin, would you say, with respect to viewpoint discrimination?
I'd actually say that they are two separate issues. They are analytically distinct, one from the other. The political bias issue might, however, be reflective. It might be illustrative of some of the antitrust problems we have in the following respect. As I pointed out in my letter to some of the tech CEOs a few weeks ago, including Google's, insofar as you've got blatant political bias by these platforms, Google in particular, it's possible that that bias being reflected in the search algorithm, the search results, might be indicative of a company that it feels like it doesn't have any competitors. It feels like it doesn't matter what it does because its would-be consumers, customers, have no choice, no option to go somewhere else.
I know you said in your opening statement that Google has worked hard to cultivate the public perception that its searches are comprehensive and unbiased. Do you believe that they are comprehensive and unbiased? It sounds like you have some question.
I do have some question, and I think most people who use Google, particularly most people in the right of center world, whether they're candidates or voters or publishers or people who just want an answer to a question, people who fit into any of those categories, who are anywhere right of center, have most likely experienced some situation in which they've asked a question and gotten results back that indicate some degree of political bias. Now, look, political bias itself is not a violation of the law. These are, in fact, private for-profit corporations. They have every right to run themselves as they see fit. But again, that does raise some questions about the status they enjoy under Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, and that in turn might also shed some light on antitrust inquiry insofar as it establishes the existence of a monopoly.
There's this website called the Federalist, and it was demonetized by Google with regard to ads and so forth. How is that related, and how did that come to bear as an example, perhaps, in this hearing and illustration?
You know, if you're going to demonetize the Federalist, and if you're going to do so on the basis that the Federalist wasn't monitoring and curating and moderating the comments in the comments section on that website, how do you do that without either being ironic or hypocritical, or perhaps both? Google's got protection under Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act to do that. So Google, having been extended that protection under Section 230, I would think ought to recognize the right, the ability, or in some cases the need of an entity like the Federalist. Why should they be in a position to say, we're going to demonetize you? That doesn't seem fair to me. This is one of the questions from the hearing that sadly went unanswered, and a question that I'm going to continue to ask in writing and otherwise. Google needs to tell us, why should Google be able to demonetize the Federalist for doing something that Google is already protected in the law for doing or not doing?
Senator Mike Lee, chairman of the Antitrust Subcommittee of the Senate Judiciary Committee, thank you for talking to us on One American News on this big day.
Thank you.
Want to see more videos like this? Click on the link below and subscribe to One America News on YouTube, and call your cable provider and kindly demand that One America News is added to your lineup. Call and subscribe today.